Welcome to vocabulary lesson number 8. This is your second video of 3 for your overall third vocabulary additional assessment. There will be 20 vocabulary words in this video, and there will be 20 words in the other two videos, meaning that you have 60 words to learn for this assessment. So let's get started. For your first word, we have engender. So engender is a word, to engender, and it means to create, to produce. So here we have the furious blizzard engendered feelings of melancholy in Louisa. So to create or to produce, here we have engendered. And so when using the word engender, do know that it's to deeply produce. That oftentimes has to do with either creating feelings in people or to create kind of deep desires or impulses. So when we have to create or to produce, know that that means intense creation for need or intense production for outcome when you're using engendered. All right. So make sure you know that's a verb, so you can use it with different tenses. So our next word is deride, which is a verb, and also derision, which is the noun version of that verb. And it means to ridicule or to make fun of. So here we have the sentence, Sideshow Bob Roberts intended to intimidate the witnesses by deriding their ability to handle the truth. So here we have him criticizing their ability to be truthful. He is ridiculing. So here it's not as much as making fun. So sometimes derision can be haha, but more often derision is kind of like cruel, ridiculing, and insulting. So keep that in mind. And you might have noticed that you have derision, which is what I said, and then deride, which is the verb. All right, so our next one is acclaim, which is a noun, and it means praise, applause, or admiration. So you might have heard the use of the word acclaim with great acclaim, it was released. And in that case, you noticed it is a noun. So the movie La La Land was released to critical acclaim for its original music, choreography, and cinematography. So again, here we know that the critics really liked it as they gave it acclaim. So it has positive connotations of being praised, and if you remember this previous vocabulary word, it might say extol or lauded. So acclaim, extol, lauded, those words are very similar in use. So next up, we have the word lethargic. Lethargic means tired, languid, and weak. So languid should be familiar with for you, as it was a previous vocabulary word, and languid can mean slow, tired. It can also mean exhausted. Do know that with lethargic doesn't exactly mean the same thing as languid, because while languid can be used to reference exhaustion, lethargic does not have any connotations of exhaustion. It's simply being kind of lazy and laying around, and it can have some connotations of weakness, but do make sure to look at your definition for languid and note the slight differences between the two words, because those are very important to understand. Now we have the baby sloth was very lethargic, sleeping for the majority of the day and only waking to eat leaves and peanuts. So here we have the baby sloth. Now the baby sloth could be described as languid, but lethargic would be the better word. He's not tired because he's been walking really far or working really hard. He's just tired because that's kind of part of who he is as a sloth, and therefore lethargic is the better word to use. All right, next word. Oh, and really quickly, for lethargic, if you want to turn that into a noun, the word you're looking for is lethargy. So you drop the IC and add a Y. So lethargic is the adjective, lethargy is the noun. So next up, we have fanatic, which is a noun, and it is one who is very devoted to a cause or an idea. So we have in the movie Elf, Buddy is a Christmas fanatic, doing everything in his power to make everyone's Christmas a holly and jolly one. So do know with fanatic, it does tend to have negative connotations of obsession. So when you use it, make sure that you use it appropriately and not in a way that you intend to be positive, because usually when people read the word fanatic, they think of it in a negative way, with obsession and not being able to let go and just being too focused on a single thing. All right, so with the next word we have is novel, and we're not talking about a book, we're talking about novel in the form of an adjective, and it means new and unusual. So with novel, we have, once again, Leslie Knope came up with a novel idea that would resolve all of Pawnee's problems in a completely original manner. So the new idea, novel could kind of be replaced with the word innovative. So when you're using it, make sure you use it not just as in brand new, but it's also supposed to be creative and unique. That is what the adjective novel means. So for our next word, we have another adjective, and it is solemn, which means serious or grave. And grave is a previous vocabulary word we have had as well, and I believe it was defined as solemn. So we have these interchangeable words. So here we have, at the wake of an acquaintance, the group of friends try to be respectful to those grieving by giving a solemn low five. So solemn means grave, serious. So if you're at a wake, you want to be serious, because if you're not, that could be insulting as someone has died. So solemn is an adjective being properly used here. So our next word is ambivalent, which is also an adjective, and it means undecided. So here in the sentence we have, the ambulance was unsure as to whether the call was actually an emergency or a prank. This left him ambivalent while driving to the address. So ambivalent does mean undecided, but it's important to know that it has connotations of being disinterested and not caring, being slightly apathetic. So do make sure you understand that aspect of the word. That's why the ambulance here is saying meh, because it's showing that he doesn't really care. So ambivalent just doesn't mean that you're undecided. It also means that you're undecided because you don't really care enough to make the decision, if that makes sense. All right, so you have ambivalent, which is the adjective. If you're curious what the noun is, it is ambivalence. So you drop the T and add a CE. So ambivalence is the noun, ambivalent is the adjective. So our next word is also an adjective, and it's reticent. So quiet, uncommunicative, taciturn. Taciturn is also a previous vocabulary word we've had. So now we're starting to use our past vocabulary words as means to define our new vocabulary words. So in a sentence, reticent is, Jill the octopus was notably reticent, constantly hiding behind her own tentacles whenever fish tried to talk to her. So here we have taciturn. And if you remember taciturn correctly, that meant to be quiet, kind of in an arrogant or mean or snooty way. Reticent doesn't have those same connotations. So reticent has more connotations of being shy and hiding because you're shy and nervous. So make sure that if you are using taciturn versus reticent or vice versa, that you're using them properly, because they do have slightly different connotative meanings. All right, so next up, we have fervor, which is a noun. A while ago, we also had the word fervent, which is the adjective. So now we have the noun, fervor. And fervor is passion, zeal, and great enthusiasm. So in this sentence, the Argentinian fans cheered for their team with great fervor, anticipating a point from the penalty kick. So this is with great passion. So remember, fervor is the noun, fervent is the adjective. And when we say passion, do you know that fervor is really intense and wild and kind of chaotic passion? Just to make it more specific in your understanding of the word. Except this guy doesn't really seem to have a lot of fervor. He seems really unenthused. He must not be a fan for Argentina. All right, moving on to the next word. So we have scanty. So scanty is an adjective, and it means inadequate and minimal. So let's take a look at the sentence. While avocados are delicious, alone it can feel like a scanty meal. So not enough, underwhelming, you might say. And so that's what scanty, the adjective, means. All right, our next word is dispassionate, a long one, and it's an adjective, and it means free from passion or spirit, so without passion or spirit. And we can kind of discern that as this says passionate and this says dis, and if we know what dis means without, so without passion. All right, so after he won the National Spelling Bee, Arvin's dispassionate response confused audience members. See, not very passionate. So that's interesting. So we have dispassionate versus fervor. So you can say fervor is somewhat the opposite of dispassionate. All right, let's get back to the spelling bee. So, Arvind was dispassionate. We see the adjective there. And there we go, dispassionate. All right, our next word is pragmatic, which is an adjective. And if you hear a little snorting in the background, my dog is sleeping right next to the computer, so that's the sound you're hearing. I don't know if you can hear that, but she's having a dream. So pragmatic is an adjective that means practical. So let's take a look at the sentence. Dog's pragmatic disposition kept him calm during the fire, as he knew he had plenty of time to flee the building. I don't know if I agree with Dog, but let's pretend he's fine. So pragmatic means overly practical, very logical. You're not affected by emotion at all. And that's what pragmatic means. So pragmatic decision making is something that people sometimes equate to politics. When someone makes a political decision that kind of seems like heartless, sometimes they say it's pragmatic, that they took emotion out of it and made the decision that had to be made. And so that's sometimes how pragmatic is used. So pragmatic is the adjective. If you want to turn it into a noun, you would call it pragmaticism. So you'd add an ISM at the end of this and have pragmaticism, and you would have a noun. All right, for our next word, we have didactic, which is an adjective, and it means instructive. So another way to think of didactic is intending to teach. So here we have the didactic phone app. So the phone app that's intending to teach provides detailed information on various paintings, which students can use as supplementary materials in their art history class. So I like that this word is in here because on the AP exam, they really like using the word didactic when asking for the purpose and or tone of the piece. So if they say what is the tone of the piece and one of the options is didactic, what that would mean is that the tone of the piece is instructive, that it's intending to teach. So keep that in mind. It's a really useful word, not only in your own writing, but also for the AP test itself. So the next word is deference and defer. So deference is the noun and defer, to defer, is the verb, and it's a show of respect. So here we have Wayne and Garth bowed in deference to rock star Alice Cooper, who they idolized and hoped to one day be like. So here we have deference, which is the noun. In deference is being treated as a thing. So it's a great deal of respect, so they're showing very intense respect to Alice Cooper. Now with defer, to defer, that's a word that we're actually very familiar with. We might just not thoroughly know what it means. So when you defer to something, you're showing respect by essentially letting whomever you defer to make the decision, and that's a sign of respect. So that's ultimately what you mean when you're using the verb to defer. All right. Next word is alleviate, which is a verb, which means to lighten or relieve. So here we have, in hopes of alleviating the heat in her apartment, Natalia brought a fan and spent most of the day sitting beside it. So alleviate sounds a lot like relieve, alleviate, relieve. So that should help you remember the word, but it is a verb and it means to lighten or relieve. All right, our next word is vacillate rather. So our next word is vacillate, and it is a verb, and it means to waver between choices. So Napoleon vacillated between two positions, liking broccoli and being completely freaked out by it. Oh, yeah, broccoli's very scary. So we can see that he's bouncing between the two positions, and that's how we see vacillate. So vacillate is a verb. Another thing to know, that vacillate is oftentimes used in graphs. When you see the line going like this, up and down, that's vacillation. And vacillation is the noun form of vacillated, which is a verb. All right, next we have endorse, which is another verb, and it means to approve of and to give support to. So early in her career, Britney Spears endorsed Pepsi as her as her soda of choice. So endorse is the verb. If you'd like to turn it into a noun, it would be endorsement. All right, our next word is conspicuous, which means easily seen out in the open. It's an adjective. And even though Loki was attempting to hide out in the elementary school, the students found his presence conspicuous during share out time. So it's pretty obvious that Loki doesn't belong there, therefore he's conspicuous. The opposite word, which would mean hidden, is inconspicuous. Our last word, I'm going to hurry because we're almost out of time, is negligence, which is a noun, which is carelessness, neglect, and indifference. Paul was subject to being very clumsy, therefore when he fell at work, it was unclear if it was due to his own negligence or that of his employer. Negligence is the noun, neglect also is the